Nice. This is a topic that I think is quite interesting for us to discuss in the next few minutes before waiting for Chapter 32 to be released. But of course, before we decide for sure which is more ideal, effective, or even perfect, let me explain briefly. In short, Karma in the Boruto series is one of the most important power seals introduced from the very beginning of the story. And as far as I understand the concept of karma, it is a special seal in the form of a 4-point tattoo pattern implanted by members of the Otsutsuki clan into the body of a person called a vessel. And again, every Otsutsuki vessel that has the karma seal activated, a small black square pattern on the palm of their hand will spread and form a much more interesting pattern. Simply put, karma functions as a backup of the Otsutsuki's biological data and consciousness, compressed into a very dense form. Its main purpose is to ensure the immortality of the Otsutsuki. If their original bodies die, the data will be automatically extracted and reconstructed inside the vessel's body, allowing the Otsutsuki to resurrect by transforming the vessel's body into a fully Otsutsuki body. This process is similar to rewriting the vessel's DNA and consciousness until the vessel loses its original identity. In Boruto, 2 Blue Vortex, karma remains at the center of the conflict, particularly regarding Boruto's struggle against Momoshiki's influence and Kawaki's development. And of course, karma has its advantages and disadvantages. In short, anyone who becomes an Otsutsuki vessel and possesses karma gains extraordinary enhancements in strength and abilities, even before the full takeover process occurs. These 4 points are also central to this concept. 1. Extreme physical enhancement. When karma is activated, usually stage 1, the user's speed, strength, endurance, and chakra reserves increase dramatically. Boruto and Kawaki become much stronger than ordinary shinobi. Number 2, chakra and ninjutsu absorption. Users can absorb chakra-based attacks simply through their palms. This makes them very difficult to defeat with chakra-based techniques, as demonstrated when fighting Boro or other ninja. 3, space-time abilities. Some vessels like Kawaki Jigen can use teleportation or portal techniques, Sukuna Hikona and Daikokuten from Ishiki. But of course, it's not just Kawaki. At times, we also see how Boruto, with Momoshiki's karma, uses space-time abilities to move Ishiki when he is searching for Kawaki in Konoha. 4. Thousands of years of combat experience. Believe it or not, behind the abilities of karma itself, we must acknowledge that every vessel of the Otsutsuki, especially when they fight, has a body like a ninja who has fought for decades. As I mentioned earlier, believe it or not, even Jigen, a monk, and Kawaki, a child of an experiment, can fight with impressive techniques. And if you say that's the result of training, it's hard to believe. Yeah, you know what I mean, right? In other words, the true core of karma's power is the Otsutsuki battle data accumulated over thousands of years. Number 5, regeneration and healing. In some cases, karma can actually heal fatal wounds, such as Momoshiki saving the dying Boruto. But of course, determining how many times regeneration can be performed depends on how fatal the wound is, right? And of course, behind the power or advantages of karma itself, there are its drawbacks. In other words, despite being extremely overpowered, karma is a double-edged sword with very high risks. 1. Takeover of the body by Otsutsuki itself. The more karma is used, the greater the influence Otsutsuki itself can take over. Boruto once lost total control while fighting several opponents, and Momoshiki almost took over completely. So, one way to make Momoshiki fail was for Boruto to break his horn to force Momoshiki's consciousness to fall asleep. Number 2, permanent transformation process. This may be similar to the previous point. If Otsutsuki succeeds in resurrecting, the vessel will lose its identity and its body will belong 100% to Otsutsuki. This is like death for the original vessel. That is at least what Momoshiki told Boruto, that he would live as Boruto Uzumaki. 3, the physical burden is immense. And believe it or not, repeated use causes extreme pain, bodily damage, or even death if the vessel is incompatible. In some cases, especially during the time skip, Boruto mentioned that when he used his karma, his body felt like it was dying. Moreover, some experiments conducted by Amado resulted in numerous casualties from failed karma transplants. Or perhaps in other words, compatibility limitations. Not everyone can receive karma. Only compatible vessels, like Boruto and Kawaki, can survive. Code: a defective vessel has weaker white karma and cannot absorb jutsu or even use any of the karma abilities. Number 5, cannot absorb all attacks. Even though we know that every karma user has truly troublesome abilities because they can absorb all of their opponent's jutsu, but unfortunately, karma is certainly very ineffective against non-chakra attacks, such as pure taijutsu or certain physical weapons. So maybe that's part of karma's weakness. 6. I know this may not be considered an absolute weakness, but somehow, every karma user always has internal and mental conflicts. Vessels like Boruto must constantly fight against Momoshiki's influence, such as pressure or anxiety, which can control the body at critical moments. Because you must remember, before the time skip, Momoshiki always provoked Boruto emotionally. Momoshiki even repeatedly revealed the dark fate of being Momoshiki's vessel. And we have to admit that Momoshiki's goal in provoking Boruto was to make him despair and give up. After that, Momoshiki hoped that Boruto would surrender his body to him. Yeah, that's how it is. Overall, karma can be considered both the greatest gift and curse in the Boruto series. It grants extraordinary power, but at the cost of losing one's self or body. Until Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, Boruto tried to control or even utilize karma without surrendering to Momoshiki, while Kawaki had a different approach to his karma. But at least after Chapter 25 was revealed, Boruto and Momoshiki made a deal so that Boruto could freely use Momoshiki's abilities and powers through his karma. Considering its strengths and weaknesses, karma is most likely considered the strongest power ever introduced in the Naruto-Boruto universe, even surpassing Sage Mode, right? So, as a final conclusion to determine which is more ideal, or perhaps more accurately perfect, this brief conclusion makes sense. If we look at its history, Jigen's karma, as the vessel of Ishiki Otsutsuki, is actually very powerful, but biologically unstable. Jigen's body is only a temporary vessel forced to contain Ishiki's power, causing his body to slowly decay from within. In other words, despite its extraordinary power, Jigen's karma was never truly compatible with his body. Then there is the case of Code, which is even more unique. He has white karma, a form of karma that failed to become a perfect vessel. Although it gives him great power, white karma does not have main functions such as absorbing ninjutsu or the otsutsuki resurrection process. This means that in the context of the actual karma system, Code arguably has the worst version of karma. Next, we come to the two characters at the center of the current story's conflict: Kawaki and Boruto Uzumaki. Kawaki is arguably the most naturally compatible and stable vessel for Ishiki's power. His body has been modified since childhood through scientific experiments by Amado, making him able to withstand karma without the devastating effects on his body that Jigen experienced. Even after Ishiki's karma was lost, Kawaki was still able to regain the same power without having to undergo the otsutsuki resurrection process again. In terms of physical stability and ability control, Kawaki's karma can be considered one of the most stable ever. Is that correct? However, if we look at the latest developments in the story, that position is beginning to change due to Boruto. Boruto possesses Momoshiki Otsutsuki's karma, and initially, this karma posed a significant threat to him. Momoshiki nearly took full control of Boruto's body on several occasions. However, following major events, including changes to Boruto's body, which is now almost entirely Otsutsuki, the situation has drastically altered. At this point, Boruto is no longer just an ordinary vessel. He has become a human whose body has evolved into an otsutsuki, but his consciousness remains his own. Even in the latest developments in the story, Boruto and Momoshiki seem to have reached a kind of balance or agreement that allows Boruto to use the power of karma without completely losing control. And this is where the interesting conclusion lies. If we're talking about bodily compatibility, Kawaki might be the most perfect and ideal vessel so far compared to Boruto. But if we talk about the balance between otsutsuki power and human consciousness, then Boruto is probably the most stable form of karma that has existed so far. I know that this may be quite confusing, but at least without any intervention or anything like that, Kawaki's position is still superior to Boruto's in terms of stability. But that's not very significant, because for the first time in karma history, we see someone who isn't completely controlled by the otsutsuki, yet hasn't completely lost their power either. But what you need to remember is that this isn't about who has the higher power level or anything like that. This is just my personal opinion based on my analysis, but if you have a more reasonable argument, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, help me reach 100 likes. I'm Nim without the E. See you in the next video. Bye-bye, Data Bio.